Good morning. Welcome to Vineyard Milwaukee. We're so glad that you've joined us this Sunday. Let's invite the Holy Spirit to invade our spaces, to really flood our houses with His love, and we would just understand our identity as His sons and daughters, and that He's our Father. So God, we just pray that you would just flood our homes with your love. I pray for a greater sense of who you are and who we are in you. You love us so much.
Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. And you've been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life into me. You've been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Yeah. When I was your foe, still your love fought for me. You've been so, so good to me. When I found no word, you paid it all for me. And you've been so, so kind to me. Couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. No shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, nights till I'm found leaving 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it. Still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. I have been restored to the love of God. I thought it was the end, but it's just begun. And I'm a sinner saved by the grace of God, not for what I've done or for what I've not. And you, my Jesus, my strength and fortress, my hope and purpose. You are all this and more, and more. And I have been restored to the love of God. I thought it was the end, but it's just begun. And I'm a sinner saved by the grace of God, not for what I've done or for what I've not. You, my Jesus, my strength and fortress, my hope and purpose. You are all this and more, and more, and more, and more. I love, oh I love you. Yes, I love you. I love, yes, I love you. Yes, I love you. I love, oh I love you. Yes, I love you. I love, oh I love you. Yes, I love you, my Jesus, my strength reaches me. It's what I need. It's what I need. Your love reaches me. It's what I need. It's what I need.
Hello, Vineyard Milwaukee. I'm Lena Wessel. I have some announcements for you. First is our VMK virtual huddles. Stay connected to your Vineyard Milwaukee family while building meaningful relationships. We currently have 3 huddle groups meeting regularly throughout the week. Please contact Rebecca Anderson, email below, to join one of our huddles. Also, we're also anxious to be together to worship again, and we are closely monitoring the recommendations by the city and the county health officials, and we are going to continue online gathering for the time being. As it becomes safer to do so, we'll start transitioning into gathering with some small, appropriately socially distanced meetings so we can have face-to-face interaction, but at a safe distance. Be sure to watch info on Facebook and our e-newsletter that comes out each week. Thank you for joining us today, and stay tuned for today's talk on addiction as part of our Overwhelmed series.
Good morning, Vineyard Milwaukee. Good to see you, and hope you're having a great Sunday. Has anyone tried to take away a piece of technology from someone near and dear to you during this time? Like, have you tried to take a computer or a phone away from someone right now? I I have to be honest with you. Like I live with somebody who has a really hard time giving up a screen right now. I mean, it causes great pain. It causes tears. It causes maybe words that shouldn't be said. Um, and I'm just describing what's going on with me, not that person. Like it is really, really hard right now to take away technology. It's almost like there's this new or maybe old addiction that is just bubbling up and taking over, and it's causing a household to feel a little overwhelmed. I don't know if you're experiencing that, but I do know that during these times we do feel overwhelmed, and we've been talking about that over the last few weeks. Today, actually, we're going to talk about uh, being overwhelmed when it comes to addiction. And we actually have a privilege of having a little interview during this talk. Rebecca is actually going to take some time and she's going to interview her brother, Rob Miller, who's down in South Carolina right now enjoying the sun. And I'm going to let you listen to that interview and I'll join you at the end.
So good morning. So I'm really excited to take this time to introduce you to my big brother. I know him as Robbie, but his name's actually Rob Miller. Rob, thanks for spending a little time with us this morning. So since nobody in this part of the woods know who you are, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay. I have information on Rebecca later if you need some information. I'm
No, this
happy
is
to
about
give
you,
it.
not about me.
But just so you know, I have it. I am 52 years old. I live in South Carolina. I have 4 kids. I have 2 grandsons that just kind of came into the world in the last couple of years, which is the best thing ever. I am a college soccer coach, and I work at a university, and I also work with a sports recruiting company. That's my current, I guess, position, job title, what have you. And my wife and I've been married for 30 years.
Yeah. So you've actually had, I would say, a pretty interesting life. Like,
Interesting's a good way of putting it. Yeah,
yeah,
a very
yeah,
interesting life. Yes.
yeah. But I
Yeah.
mean, you have a happy marriage and 4 daughters who are doing extremely well, and
Yes.
now 2 healthy grandkids, and
Yep.
the life's been okay for you. But I know it hasn't always been. And so, as you know, we're talking about addiction today. And I know that when I was in middle school and you were in high school, you kind of hit a rough patch in your adolescence. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I think as most of you know, if you've been a teenager, teenage life is challenging as it is. I think for me, I think going through that experience, I was trying to find myself, trying to figure out, I guess, a direction in my life, a little bit lost. I grew up in a Christian home, but I kind of veered away from that a little bit and kind of rebelled against that. And I think I had a lot of self-esteem issues, trying to figure out who I was, not feeling confident, feeling good about who I was. And I searched for that in a lot of different things. Experimented with alcohol, various types of drugs, relationships, whatever. I tried to dabble in a bit of everything and put my life in danger on multiple occasions, and found myself in environments that I definitely didn't want to be in, with people I didn't want to be around,
Yeah.
many times. So.
Yeah, and I obviously was younger than you, but just knowing your history and looking back on it now, I know that you struggled with attention deficit disorder, and
Yes.
you started school really young because back in the day they didn't have the same cutoff date, and your birthday is in October, so you started school as a 4-year-old, and I know that all those things can lead to kids struggle for kids in school. And
Yes.
so, what do you think? Because I know you started experimenting with drugs and alcohol pretty young, right? Like 14, around age 14.
Yeah, probably 13 or 14.
Yeah,
I think attention deficit disorder is a I think uh, a way to maybe mask that with the struggles that come along with that. And I think for me, I found that it helped me maybe calm down, focus, whatever else I needed to do. And I think it had a factor in my drug use and experimenting with things. I think people with attention deficit tend to take more risk, take more chances,
hmm
especially with young boys. I jumped off cliffs. I did all the chaotic stuff that young boys do, and
yeah,
but I think it also, as you grow older, you risk other things. You take chances in other areas of your life. So I
right.
think that had a factor in it as well, for sure.
Yeah, and so yeah, I mean, when we look back on it, we often say that kids were self-medicating, kids who either had issues with anxiety or ADHD, because I know the feeling is that you kind of feel out of control internally.
That's correct. Yes.
And then if you're not doing well in school and you're getting in trouble all the time, I know, my older son Caleb struggled with that in school for various reasons, who would just get in trouble a lot for talking too much or being silly, and so that can beat up your self-esteem. So do you remember at that young of age kind of how you felt internally?
Yeah, I was along the same lines. I just felt very lost. I think the challenge was I was being tested because my academics were struggling, but I was testing with a higher IQ. So
Mm-hmm.
the teachers were saying I was lazy and I was distracted and et cetera, because my IQ test was showing that I had a level of intelligence that was higher than my grades were reflecting.
Right,
So
right.
I think having 2 college degrees now, looking back on that, I see where those things kind of clashed. And so I think part of my self-esteem issue was I wasn't matching up to what I felt like I could. So I just drowned it out in drugs, and I
Right.
guess maybe um, being angry with myself, disappointed in myself on a consistent basis. I think that's how I felt throughout my teenage years. Very disappointed in who I was and what I was
Mhm.
doing to mask all that.
Yeah, and that's where shame enters the scene, right? It's like
Sure,
we
sure.
just somehow we're not living up to some standard that we either have put on ourselves or we think our parents are putting on us, or and so we just feel like failures, and then we're ashamed. And
Yeah,
that's where
absolutely.
the enemy just gets a hold of us. Just, we talked about shame a few weeks ago, it just sabotages our identity. So here you are, 13 and 14. I know some of the people listening have kids that age. younger, a little older, where did you find drugs and alcohol at age 13 and 14? And I know your list of drugs that you experimented with was pretty long. I mean,
Yes, yes. Well,
um,
at this day and age, I think access is not hard. Unfortunately, I hate to say that. I've also
yeah.
been, my background's in psychology, and I've been a counselor as well. And kids can kids are way more creative now in ways of finding it. There's so many ways on the internet and through connecting and networking with people, they can get to it easy. And there's more accessibility, painkillers and, ADD medication and things. Kids are learning how to sell it and pawn it off, et cetera, et cetera. So
Hmm.
just the raw access to it is way more advanced than when I was even using stuff back in those days.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, just tell us a few of the things. I know obviously people are, familiar with, you know, pot and alcohol, marijuana are the most widely used. But what were some of the other drugs you were experimenting with at that age?
Well, at that time, I used cocaine. I used LSD, so hallucinogenic
Hmm.
mushrooms. Quaaludes,
Hmm.
those kind of things. That generation, those are disappearing. There's so much more designer drugs now, synthetic drugs, and people are making them. You
Hmm.
have crystal meth and things like that that kind of weren't hitting the scene back when I was doing things. But Quaaludes were big things. Cocaine was a big thing,
Hmm.
and I got caught in dealing drugs as well because I was around that culture and I was in environments where they were dangerous for a 17-year-old kid to be in,
Right.
where guys are I was with dangerous people,
Right.
and here I am, this suburban kid, and I'm in the middle of these, drug dealers' houses, and this kind of thing. And it was just pulled me into some bad situations. And the enemy, that's kind of how the enemy operates. He pulls you into dark environments
Right.
and pulls you farther away from him. And that's what I
Right.
think happened a lot to me at that time. So,
Yeah, absolutely. You get in isolation. Yeah. And so what ended up happening then? So you are, you're a teenager. So you still are under your parents' authority. And of course, your family finds out that things in your life are kind of falling apart, right? Like you talked about your grades are slipping and you're getting in trouble all the time. And so they start intervening.
right,
And what
right.
ends up happening to you then?
Well, first I wrecked a few cars, and I snuck out at wee hours of the morning, and I started being angry towards my family, abusive towards my, parents, towards my brothers and sisters, et cetera, et cetera. Just angry, and I didn't know where it was coming from.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it was just, me being just angry with who I was. So I went into a short-term drug rehabilitation facility, a 30-day kind of unit to clean up a little bit. That was not effective for me. I went back in the party scene. Then I did it again, and finally, my parents found a more long-term kind of thing where it was sort of um, other kids confronting you and doing those kind of things. So it was very, very helpful to have people know I was full of baloney and
Yeah.
confronting me about it and not putting up with my attitude and all those other things. And then I was taken away from all the substances, and I had to just be real with myself and my spirituality and my beliefs and my self-esteem and all those things. I just sobbed for probably for 3 months,
Yeah.
just from all the pain I caused other people, myself, everything else, and got to, I guess, discover who I was a little bit more, discover my relationship with the Lord more at the time, and it was just like a revelation and an awakening
Yeah.
for me. So it was incredible. But
And
it had been
that's
around me all the time. I just didn't want to seek it. I wanted to do
right.
it my way, that
Right.
kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're out of control, and
Yes.
then you go to a place where basically all you they almost it's almost a sense of being imposed powerlessness. Like they take everything away from you. So
Yes.
you're totally raw, you're totally stripped down.
Yes. Yes.
And then you begin to be worked through really, the 12-step program,
Yes.
their own version of it. And
Right.
I know I was reviewing the 12 steps, and the first three are really about recognizing that you are powerless, that your life's out of control, and then surrendering your life and your will to God. And
Right.
so,
Right.
who was that God for you? I know not everybody that goes through AA, they say to God as you understand Him. What was your understanding of God at that point in your life? Who
Well,
was your God, basically?
for me, obviously, I grew up in a Christian home, so I already
Right.
had a base available to me, and I had an understanding. Just because you understand something doesn't mean you listen to it or follow it. And
Right.
And I certainly understood Christianity and God, and that Jesus had been there for me and was there to save me and direct my life and guide my life. And once I surrendered to that, just all those other steps became, just started falling into place one after the other. And I was
Right.
able to start, I guess, redefining my life, redefining the direction of my life, um, and getting back to being a human being again, a real
Yeah.
one. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So um, what do you think was first restored to you in that experience when you kind of discovered an authentic relationship with Jesus? You were kind of stripped down, and you kind of talked about almost like reclaiming your identity or having your identity restored.
Yeah.
Um, what was that experience like to actually, like, what do you think was restored to you?
Wow. Well, that would be a typical question, the deep question that has about a 2-hour response. But in the nutshell version,
Yeah.
I think for me, um, just to lack of a better way of saying it, kind of sanity, kind of a
Yeah.
peace in my life. Because I don't care what anybody says. They can say doing drugs, everything is peaceful, and put you in that. It's just not true. They can
Hmm.
say it all they want, and I can tell them firsthand that that's just not the case.
Yeah.
It dictates your moods and how you feel and who you are and your actions. It dictates your actions, your behaviors, everything. And all when I discovered the what God had for me,
Hmm.
and I became a peace. I got a purpose in my life. I think the number one thing is
Mm.
purpose. I
Yeah.
finally had a purpose, and the purpose was um, follow Him and see where He takes you. That's the
Yeah.
coolest journey, right?
Yeah.
What a journey that is. I mean, it's just amazing. It really is amazing what can happen when you find your purpose in God. It really
Yeah.
is.
And you just basically described the last step of the 12 steps, which was, just looking at it real quick, sought through prayer and meditation, uh, to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out, which is basically what you're saying. That was your purpose. What's
Absolutely.
God's will for me? And God, give me the power to carry that out. And I like what you said too about restoring your sanity, because I think a lot of people uh, become addicted to things because they feel out of control. And then what they don't realize is now that thing has control over them,
That's
just like
correct.
what you were saying. So
That's
here you
correct.
you were grasping for control. You're like a 13 and 14-year-old kid that self-esteem has been beat up. You've got a chemical imbalance with your ADHD. You're feeling out of control. And so you basically start self-medicating by trying to find control, and then it takes control over you. And
Yeah.
you're right when you said the enemy's in that, right? Like he's going
Oh,
to take
100%.
advantage to sabotage your identity. And then the shame enters in, and it keeps you in that cycle because then you feel
Yes.
like crap. So you keep taking whatever your substance is to feel better. And
That's
then
right.
you damage, your relationships, and you feel more ashamed. It's just this vicious cycle. Um,
Absolutely.
so one thing, it was interesting when I was kind of preparing this and reflecting on my experience as I was in, I think, sixth grade when you were in the Kids Helping Kids program as like a 17-year-old. And what was interesting is, if you probably remember when we would go on Friday nights to the open mic night or
Right,
whatever it was
right.
called,
I
you
don't think it was
guys,
called open mic, but that sounds good.
yeah, it was whatever
And you
those,
sang when you came and sang your solos. That was
yes,
beautiful.
no, but you guys sang, all these kids,
Right,
and you
right.
sang things like those old fashioned songs that you sing around the campfire or you sing in
Yeah,
Sunday school, like "You're Something Special, You're the Only One of Your Kind," and you
yeah.
even sang like "I'm a Little Teapot," and you did a little
I will
motion.
say that I'm not going to sing that now, just for the sake. They don't want to hear me. They
No,
definitely don't want to hear me.
they don't want to hear me either. But the point I want to make is, I think what was beautiful about that is what was being restored for all of you was your innocence. It
Yes.
was
Oh,
like
yes.
God was bringing you back to who you really were, which
Yes.
was His child.
Yes.
And I think that it was a gift to the parents to be able to see their little boys and girls up there.
Yes.
And I think that really was a picture, almost like that experience of what was happening internally inside all of you. God was restoring you restoring your innocence and
Yes.
that part
Yes.
of you that who you really are, your true identity in him. Which I
That's
think,
a great. That really is an excellent way of putting it, and that's kind of what we are. We are. Um, you have to go to the Lord like children. I mean, that's
yeah,
even as adults. I mean, there's no better way to go to God than that. And
yep.
open yourself up and be humble.
Robbie, thank you so much for being vulnerable and be willing to go down memory lane with your sister. We really appreciate it. I know that Robbie talked a lot about his addiction to drugs and alcohol from a young teenager and his journey with Jesus to recovery. But alcohol and drugs are not the only addictions that keep us in bondage. There's sex, there's internet, there's shopping, there's gaming. People have body image addictions, food, adrenaline junkies. And lately, I just feel like there's even people addicted to just hate. But here's the deal. The Bible says in Galatians 5, chapter 5, verse 1, says, "It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourself be burdened again by a yoke of slavery." See, we were created to be free. We're not created to be oppressed. We're not created to be in bondage. One of the things that keeps us from living the life we are created to live is actually addiction. Anything that controls you instead of you controlling it is locking you up. Now, I'm sure you can think about some things that maybe I didn't even say that automatically, even now, as we're talking, you're like, yep, I got one of those. So we're going to hang out today in Matthew 5. And if you're not familiar with this, this is like one of like the talk of all talks that Jesus gave. It's amazing. And if you're not familiar with actually Celebrate Recovery, that deals with a lot of people who have issues with addiction, they love to hang out in Matthew 5, so much so that their 8 recovery principles come out of Matthew 5. And we're going to break those down for you a little bit today. So this is the talk of all talks. He starts with this. He says, "Happy are those who know that they are spiritually poor." That means you have to realize that you're not God. You have to admit that you're powerless to the control of all these tendencies that you have, all these wrong things, and that your life is actually unmanageable. Then it goes on and says, "Happy are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted." That means you need to believe that God exists, that you matter to him, and that he has the power to help you recover from these things that control you. He's the only one that has the sustaining power to help you recover. He really is. He goes on to say, "Happy are the meek." That means that you have to choose to commit all of your life and will to Christ's care and control. That means that I allow God to actually enter into my mess and care for me. Wow, that's a big deal. Allow God into your mess. Allow him into the thing that has you bound up and locked up. And then here's the next step is actually allow him to care for you there, right there in the midst of it all. It's a big deal. Then he says, "Happy are the pure in heart." That means that we actually have to openly examine and confess our flaws to ourselves, to God, and to someone else. It's called confession. And faith walking, if you've been around our church for any amount of time, you've heard us throw faith walking around. Faith walking basically is a journey that you can take. It's a 2-day retreat. It starts off as a retreat, and then it moves into sort of a 6-month coaching session with some online classes. It's really a powerful tool to actually engage your mess and then allow God to come in and literally bring healing to that mess. Allow him to care for you. And on June 5th and 6th, there's actually going to be an online retreat. And I just want to throw that out there to you today. that if this is something that you're sitting there, you know what, I would love to figure out how I can invite Jesus into my mess and work through some of this stuff that maybe I haven't looked at in a long time, or maybe I never have. We're going to provide the link in this post, and I would encourage you just to go ahead and register. It's online. It's $20, and it's well worth it. But then here's what happens. We're going to continue with the story, and Jesus says in his teaching, he says, "Happy are those whose greatest desire is to do what God requires." That means that we voluntarily submit to any and all the changes God wants to make in our life. And humbly, we ask him to remove all of these character defects that we have built up over the years, over time, as we have allowed other influences come in and control our life. He then goes on to say, "Happy are the merciful, happy are the peacemakers." See, what we do now is we evaluate our relationships. We offer forgiveness to those who have hurt us, and we make amends for the harm that we've done and accept the harm that we've done to others. See, it's kind of like what we're doing is we're cleaning up our mess, but we're inviting Jesus into it. And the way we do that is we continue to talk daily with God. We have self-examination with him. Like, how am I doing? And we dive into the Bible so we can know more about the order of things with God and his will for our life, and to gain the power to follow his will. Then Jesus says, "Happy are those who are persecuted because they do what God requires." That means we yield ourselves to God to be used to bring his good news to others, both by our example and by our words. And I'm willing to bet right now that there's a number of you right now that something's got you trapped, something's got you locked up. No matter where you are today, I can honestly say that Jesus can restore your sanity, your innocence, and your freedom. And I just want to encourage you to try some of these truths on and begin your journey to recovery, to living a free life. If you'd like more information about this journey, or you'd like more information about what next steps are offered for you, please contact us at vineyardmilwaukee.com. We would love to enter into this journey with you. Bless you. Go be the church.